I'll pick a day either after a rain where, everything's not crunchy, or I like slipping in the wind. If the wind's too high, the deer are locked down, laid down, they're not moving. They might stand up and browse and lay back down, but they're really easy to slip up on. And if you know where they're laying, you can slip up on beds. I avoid openings, I stay in the shade, If there's a little bit of water, I'm gonna walk in the water. If there's a creek, it may be waist deep or something, but nothing but my head up, just over the bank, and I'm slipping.
How often do you get recognized at trailheads and stuff?
Everybody.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, dude, you're...
I had opening morning, there was like 6 or 8 guys walk by and see me from like 200 yards. I can see them looking. Norwood? Yeah.
Oh my gosh, dude.
Now you know I'm here.
I saw you post something about that the other day, where you said something about like you saw some guys at a trailhead and you were getting Facebook requests.
Yeah, well, it wasn't even just that. It's Facebook, I guess, because you're nearby. So the friend suggestion popped up, and then I was like, I just saw those guys this morning in the woods, and then I started getting friend requests.
Yeah. Well, like I said earlier, like it's not surprised that you get recognized so much, because for real, dude, when we ask people about guest recommendations in Florida, it's you. And like, I'm not trying to like blow your head up or anything here, but for real, it's like we get a lot of requests for you. So
I don't know why.
I don't know, dude. Apparently you're
We'll see.
We're going to find out today.
We find out today on the Southern Outdoors. All right, so let's get into it. So you're a big deer hunter, big turkey hunter. We were talking a little bit before we got started. You hunt a little bit of everything. So why don't we start out, where are you originally from? Like, what's your background?
Plant City, Florida, Central Florida. My dad chose to homeschool me so I could go hunt all the time.
Good dad.
So, so if dad went, I went. So I'd kind of do school on weekends and things like that. He worked me and took me hunting. We were either in the woods or fishing basically year round.
Oh, that's awesome. What'd your dad do?
He was taxidermist.
Okay.
And then he had a construction company.
I gotcha.
But yeah, so he basically ran his own business. He was home a lot. And then he would let me do school through the summer when there was no season open and take off the entire deer season. Me and both my brothers. So, I mean, from opening day to closing day, we were in the woods.
Dude, your dad sounds awesome.
He was cool.
Yeah, that's an interesting upbringing. I don't know if we've ever had anybody on the podcast that had that perspective as a kid growing up, where they were homeschooled and they had, because, like your dad, passionate outdoorsman, you like to hunt as well, just take off all deer season school-wise, just the deer hunt, dude.
Yeah. Oh, my friends were jealous, no doubt.
So,
they were going to school and I was going to the woods.
Well, I want to talk about kind of your upbringing when it comes to hunting. Like when you got into deer hunting, was it dog hunting? Was it stand hunting, still hunting? Like, what did y'all do?
When I was real young, it was majority dog hunting, and then we would knock off at, like, back then you didn't have all the tracking collars and all that stuff, so if you ran too late, you were out there all night looking for your dogs. But we would knock off at 3:30, and then we would go still hunt evenings. If it was raining, we would still hunt mornings, but majority dog hunting up until, and public, all public land. And then we got a lease up in North Florida when I was probably 12 years old, something like that. Had that for a few years, but then we didn't like it, went right back to the public. So I've always been public land.
So you mentioned that your dad was a taxidermist. How long has your family been in Florida?
Born and raised.
Like your
dad? My dad's mom would have came from Tennessee, and he was born here. So.
Okay, long-time Floridians, man. It's an interesting state you live in. After tromping around down here a little bit in the woods, it's an interesting state.
Yeah, and kind of getting to, I want to talk a little bit about your dad. Is he still living, or
No, he passed away. Interesting story. December of 2017, we were running dogs, and actually his dogs were running a couple bucks, and we were shooting at him, and he had a 70% blockage, basically a heart attack, and all but dropped dead there. We were out in the middle of nowhere, and gave him CPR for a long time, but didn't make it.
Man, sorry to hear
But
that.
good way to go for a man like him.
That's right. That's right.
So, I want to talk more about your upbringing with your dad. Okay, big outdoorsman, taxidermist, had his own business and everything, so he had a lot of free time to really take you and your brother out to go hunt. Let me ask specifically about the dog hunting. Was there anything as a young boy that you learned from like a woodsmanship standpoint from dog hunting that maybe, especially when it comes to hunting pressure or anything like that, that maybe something that you still use today or still is in the back of your mind?
I would say knowing how bucks travel and bedding areas, like not necessarily bedding areas like in other states where you have one defined thicket, but just how bucks bed in different terrain, because the dogs are going to trail them up and jump on you. Hey, he was laying right there. So as a kid, I was seeing that, and we walked with the dogs a lot, so we'd actually see the deer jump up, and he was laying by that big tree with a blowdown. It was always, and it starts clicking. So when I decided, hey, I'm gonna shoot big bucks, it was like I already knew all this stuff.
And I bring that up. The one reason I want to bring that up is because I don't know. Do you still dog hunt at all?
Yeah, I do a lot. Yeah.
Okay, so still dog hunt a little bit.
That's something I can do with the kids.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I can throw the kids in the truck and go.
But see, a lot of people talk about dog hunting that there's like no woodsmanship aspect to it. It's just the dogs doing all the work. And the houndsmen that I've talked to that's been doing it for a long time or grew up around it talked about, especially a lot of the old timers, of how well they knew those woods and all the exit routes and how bucks and deer would just navigate them. Which again comes back to the woodsmanship aspect that I'm sure it was.
Yeah, there's not much public land in Florida that I haven't walked. And that's 90% of it's with dogs, or was with dogs, and just like I was saying, you would walk with them and see the dogs get up. See the deer get up. Now, just like if you were in Wisconsin or wherever you were, and you're trying to stalk up on a bedded buck, when I'm dog hunting, I'm basically taking the same method. I'm going to that bed, but I'm taking the dogs with me, and then they're jumping the buck and running him, or we turn out on tracks and cameras and stuff like that too, and let the dogs trail them up. But I like the walking part of it.
So you said again, even back then when you were real young, and that's pretty much what y'all did. Y'all still hunted. Rainy morning, y'all still hunt. When I say still hunt, just not using dogs.
Right.
Some people don't understand that in some states, but that's kind of the term that at least our agencies in the Deep South uses. Yeah. If you're not dog hunting, you're still hunting. Yeah. But when did you kind of start going out on your own, whether it was on public land or leased land or whatever y'all had access to back then, and started still hunting a little bit more and started learning on your own, taking some of those skill sets you learned maybe hunting with your dad, but applying them for yourself?
I would say probably he started dropping me off when I was probably 12, something like that. And then, I didn't get into, I didn't care it, up until 20-something, maybe 22 years old, maybe, I don't know. But from 12 to 22, I just wanted to shoot deer. And we didn't have a bag limit. So that was a lot of deer. but once I transitioned into, hey, I've killed enough deer, now I want to kill some big ones, then I really focused in. But I was probably 20, 22 then. I was probably older than that. I was probably 2006-ish.
Back then, did you know anybody who lived in Florida who was targeting and killing mature bucks, especially on public land, consistently?
Probably about 2006 I did. There was an old man. He's not around anymore, but he marked trees, and some of his trees you can still see the marks and stuff on them. That was back before maps. And that's how he navigated the woods, and I still see some of his marks, but he would take guys in. A lot of times in archery season, they would shoot 10 registry bucks a season. In some places, most guys wouldn't even walk in nasty swamps.
Interesting.
He motivated me, when I was like, if he can do it, I can do it.
Would you say he was like almost partly a mentor for you when it came to that kind of stuff, or did you have any?
No, not like he never took me or anything. It was strictly just listening to his stories and just taking like he would find a group. He liked to find like groups of bucks, so he would find an area that just because of the terrain, people either couldn't get dogs or couldn't access or had been flooded for 10 years. whatever the situation was, to where there was a whole bunch of bucks in one area that were 4, 5, 6, 7 years old because of whatever reason, and that's where he hunted that year, and he would kill 10 of them. So I started kind of, that works.
Also, I'm guessing, especially when you met him, trail cameras weren't super well used back then, and they were pretty, they're nothing like it was today. So it was a lot more woodsmanship of him going in and finding the sign in order to try to find those bucks.
Yeah, I didn't have a trail camera till recently. Like, I never used trail cameras. Yeah, I'm behind the times.
Well, that probably makes you a better hunter.
Sure it does.
Would you say that?
Oh, I'm sure it does, yeah. Just having to read the sign, and I mean, a lot of times I didn't know. I would just know there's a big buck in the area. I wouldn't know what he looked like, but I wouldn't, and it's more exciting too.
Yeah. Yeah, man, you just mentioned that guy.
You don't know what to expect.
You mentioned that guy listening to his stories, and the first thing that came through my head, I was like, man, I bet he had some crazy stories hunting these swamps down here all the time, which I'm sure you do too, and I'm sure we're going to get into it. But so you started about 2006 trying to focus on killing bigger bucks.
Older deer, bigger deer. Yeah.
Bigger deer. How long did it take you to kind of get over the hump and actually start being successful?
First time. That wide one right there.
Really?
First time.
Well, what's the story on that deer?
Went in archery season. Probably, I don't remember the dates or anything, but early archery season, because it was hot. And hunted off the ground, and went in for a morning hunt, hunted off the ground, and I can't remember if I saw anything first. Anyway, like 11 o'clock, went and picked up. I start slipping. I like slipping, even archery. I like slipping. So I'm getting in the cabbage palm thickets and slipping around the edges and all that. And I came up to a little, almost like a dry pond, just a grass pond. And as I was slipping up there, I seen a top of a cypress tree doing this. I'm like, what in the world? I eased up there and looked, and there was 3 of them. And one of them was a lot bigger than that one, but I missed him and went back. But I knew they were there. Never saw that deer again either. He was probably 160-inch deer.
Whoa!
Yeah, and went back 2 mornings later or something and killed that one. He was one of the 3.
Dang, so you're getting on deer that big in central, like, would you call it Central Florida?
Yeah. They're getting to be, I mean, there's a lot of big deer around, but I don't think it's quite like it used to be as far as finding the places where there's 10 of them, because nobody goes there. Now we have these maps and everybody can find it. So that you don't find as many of those spots. So like I used to have those spots all over the place. So I know like for 3 years, I'll go hunt here, here, and here. And then wait 5 years and I'll go hunt here, here, and here. And I could just keep doing circles, and now I can't. There's people touch about everything now.
So what was especially when you first got started, what did you need to see in order for you to have confidence that there was a mature buck in the area?
Mostly tracks, big tracks. And that's another thing, going back to the dog hunting, I really learned to track from dog hunting. So a stride, that's something I look at, here in Florida, or Central Florida. A good 5-year-old buck is going to weigh, 160, 180 pounds, something like that, 6-year-old. So he's stepping 2.5 of my shoes. A huge deer stepping 3, and that's rare. So 2.5 to 2 3/4, I'm hunting him.
Okay. Now, also, what do you call a big track? Like,
I don't care about size. I mean, I do. As far as size, you can look at some tracks that are just huge. That's a big buck. But most of the time, I'm looking at the stride.
So the distance between
tracks. Yeah.
And that 2 of your, what size shoe do you wear?
These are 11s.
Okay, so.
But most of the time, I'm like dog season. I wear boots, so I'm comparing it to boots that are a little bit bigger. But
okay.
So they need 2 and 3/4 of my shoe. Yeah, if he's stepping 2 and 3/4 of my shoes, he's at least over 3.5 years old.
How are you?
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah, we're gonna talk more about this because I'm interested in this. Also, how do you determine if it's a walking track stride versus a trotting versus, of course, running or anything like that? How would you explain that to people?
If you're looking in dirt, you would see if the dirt was rolled up. Or, if his toes are spread apart, it's obviously not just a walking, he's jogging or doing something. So I want to see the walking track. If I'm looking at a running track, then I'm strictly going by size and length, but that's hard to do.
When it comes to tracks, I'm guessing, maybe you can tell us from like a scouting standpoint. Let's talk about that. How did you scout back then in order to find those tracks? Like, what were you, not necessarily what you were looking for, but like, where were you typically finding tracks? And did you have a certain comfort zone of like how far you need to go in order to find where a buck's going to be laying at? Like, was it ever like super close to the road? Did you have to go beyond some things in order to find that kind of sign?
It depended on where I was hunting. If I was hunting a place that had a lot of dirt roads and easy to track, I would track out of the truck. You know, just get in the truck and drive, and find somewhere in that management area he's going to cross a road, and then I could backtrack him and kind of know where to look based off where he crossed that road. And now, even that's funny looking back now, where they crossed the road 20 years ago before we had maps. It's the same place they're crossing the road now, and it's on the topo line every single time. In other states, that probably means nothing. I don't know, but here they're crossing on the topo line. So I would find those. I mean, and after you do it a while, you know, I just go look here. If there's a buck there, he crossed the road here. So I'll just go look here, and find the tracks and back them up. But if I was in a thicker area, you know, not road, something like that with no roads, then I would look in hog rooting, you know, walk the edge of cypress ponds, things like that. And then while I'm doing that, if I see a rub like this, well, there's one here.
Also, you talk about backtracking them. Is that something that you started out doing as well? And was that something that old timer was telling you about, or?
No, he never talked about backtracking. His big thing was getting inside the thickets with him.
Okay.
That was what he wanted to do.
So backtracking is something that you kind of started playing around with, I guess?
Yeah, probably coming from, I never really thought about it too much. It's just something I started doing. Probably coming from the dog hunting. I mean, because I kind of know how a buck, I mean, depending on what phase of the rut or whatever, he may walk from dark to daylight. So just that ground he covers and kind of where he's at based, you know, when I find his track, what terrain he wants to bed in. And then if I do, you know, like say I locate a certain buck, then I kind of know he likes bedding in this terrain. Then he might have 5 places like that around. I can kind of find each one of his beds. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. So back then you'd cut a big track and you would instantly try to backtrack, as in going back the way he was coming.
And if I couldn't see the track, I mean, a lot of times you can because it's mud, or you kind of just know his general direction he came from, and keep hitting cypress pond edges or something until you picked it back up. And it, you know, and I remember I think it was, I was 14 years old. I backtracked one. One of my best bucks at before I was big buck hunting, but I'd backtracked him and I found what he had done was made a rub line, and I come to find out he was doing it every 3 days. He was making a loop, but I found where his tracks crossed in like 3 places, and that's where I sat and I killed him. But that was something that always stuck with me, like find where they're there more than once.
Okay. Now, also kind of with the tracks and backtracking, you're talking about like trying to figure out maybe like a bedding area or like some kind of habitat or terrain that they want to bed in. Can you talk about different examples of bedding areas or habitat or terrain that you've seen bucks bed in and around across Florida?
I mean, it varies a lot through the state. You get up in, say, like the Ocala area where there's a lot of scrub and rolling hills and all that. They'll use the hillsides just like they do in hill country, Tennessee, Alabama. It's not really any different there. The only difference is a lot of the management areas have flag ponds and stuff like that in them, and they'll lay on the edge of that water, especially in dog hunting management areas, for that safety. You know, to be a lot of our pretty much all of our management areas have controlled burns, and if it's a wet year, that burn doesn't make it all the way to the opening of the pond, so the edge is real thick, and they'll lay right in that little strip of thick up next to the water, with the wind coming off the hill. You know, water at their, bedded up next to the water, and then like. If you're talking about cypress ponds, like pines and cypress ponds and things like that, they'll go belly deep out in the water and lay at a dry spot at the base of a tree, and that's the most common here. But when they start doing that, then it's hard to narrow down beds. Like an older buck, he might have, well, he could have as many beds as he wants, but he may have 5 or 6 beds in one pond or in each pond. But a lot of times he'll have a pond he prefers. And it'll be a big old nasty pond.
Yeah, I get, my mind just keeps going back to the cover aspect again. Keep bringing it back to this old timer you mentioned. You were saying he likes to get in the thickets with him, and I just immediately was like, "What thicket?" Because I've been walking around out here.
It's all thicket.
Oh, dude.
No, he hunted areas with a lot of juniper trees and tie-dye trees. Do y'all know what that is? Tupelo honey.
Oh yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
it's tie-dye. It's just a tangle. So he would basically crawl in or cut him a little trail in or whatever he had to do. But he would get in there on them almost islands inside the swamp of just that tangle and find him just enough opening to shoot. Strictly archery hunting. Find him just enough opening to shoot, and that's where he would kill him. Because they're moving around in that stuff all day.
Sounds like Glenn Solomon.
Sounds like a couple guys.
Yeah, well, we interviewed a gentleman from South Georgia years ago, and he was talking about hunting tie-tie bays. I don't know what a tie-tie is, but it sounded nasty.
Thick and nasty.
Interesting, man. That's like, and by the way, with the tracking, I can see how that could work. Again, walking around in some of these swamps, like we haven't been on a ton of areas in Florida, but the ones that we have walked around in, when you get into some of those swamps, especially when they're dry.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say.
Yeah, you can follow
like
a
this,
track.
You can really track because there's nothing but mud.
Yeah, and then the size. I never found a big track today, like walking around, but I found some decent sized tracks. I mean, I don't know what a big track is down here, but that was, you kind of answered it earlier, but you were saying that like a big mature buck, 180 pounds.
Yeah, where you were today, a big mature buck's comparable to your home state.
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty much what it is in Alabama. About 180 pound deer, that's a pretty good deer. A 200 pound deer where we're from, Central Alabama, is a big buck.
Yeah, I haven't personally, but me and my brothers, we've only killed 2 or 3 over 200 pounds in our lifetime. So.
Yeah, Florida has kind of a reputation for, not being a big buck state. But the more guys that we talk to, like yourself, kind of throw that for a loop a little bit. And actually, being around Florida, it's so lush. Like, there's so much vegetation. There's so much thick cover. I'm like, there's got to be some pretty decent deer down here.
Yeah, especially when you get into, like, river bottom where there's nutrients. And then, this is something in my mind. Deer get a lot of nutrients from ash. So when they burn, deer immediately, the fire is still smoking. And the deer are out there on the burn eating the ash. And one of my best bucks I killed, he basically lived at a 4-way intersection. So one year they burnt, I guess he would have been a year and a half old. They burnt this block. Next year they burnt this block. Next year they burnt this block. And I killed him when he was 6.5, but basically his entire life he had fresh burn and there was some acorns there and stuff, but for where he lived, he was huge. But I'm sure it had a lot to do with that nutrients.
Well, what's a big buck down here, like antler-wise, to you guys?
I call anything over 130 inches big, but like if you're wanting to, a trophy would be 160.
What? Oh my gosh. That's the same thing for Central Alabama. Same exact thing. If someone shoots a 130-inch buck in Alabama, that's a better deer than most people will ever kill in Alabama.
We're getting a lot more guys now, letting them get some age on them, but that was the biggest thing for so long. Everybody shot every 2.5-year-old buck they saw, and 2.5-year-old bucks are dumb. So they die quick, they die easy. But now you're getting a lot more guys that want to shoot a big one.
Well, and that goes back to earlier point you made too about how, things like Onyx have come out. People are finding these spots on the maps. And I was watching one of your videos one time where you might have been sitting in this shop right here where you had another guy with you and y'all were just talking about deer for like an hour. And one of the things that you said that like really caught me was you said you get on Facebook and you go and you look for the people complaining about W Mason and they're like, oh, it's hot, it's buggy, there's no deer there, it's awful.
Loaded with hogs and mosquitoes.
Loaded with hogs and you're like, I'm going there.
That's where I'm going.
Explain that.
Well, 9 times out of 10, somebody that didn't have a dad or an uncle or somebody that grew up hunting that can tell them, hey, get on past this and it's great. They're just going to walk that first half mile like, this is terrible, I'm leaving. And they're not going to put any time in it. But when you, in those management areas, you always find 2, 3, 4, 5 guys that have hunted it for 20 years that do nothing but trophy hunt. And that's and I run into those same guys in every one of those management areas. It's like the same 4 of us that hunt everything.
So it might be the off season, but we're still always thinking about whitetails. And if you're looking to get more mobile this fall and you're looking at saddle setups, the 2 most common designs you're going to see are a single panel design or a double panel design. They both have their advantages and disadvantages. A single panel design is going to be more comfortable right out of the box, while a double panel design is going to be much more adjustable and customizable to your fit. We always say on the podcast, saddles are kind of like boots. Different people are going to like different things. As a general rule of thumb, I found that heavier set guys typically like a single panel more than they like a double panel. But other than that, it's just really a matter of preference. I personally use both of these saddles. This is the Method 2 from Latitude, and this is the Lone Star from Latitude. I will say that the Method 2 is really nice because it's a 2-panel design. It's almost like you have a built-in back band that'll take a little bit of pressure off your back when you're sitting down. But if you're just getting into saddle hunting and you want something that's extremely comfortable right out of the box, the Lone Star is going to be your go-to. It has an advanced hip pinch reduction system in it, so right out of the box, this is going to be very comfortable, and you're not going to have the hip pinch issues that a lot of people have when they first get into saddle hunting. So if you want to be more mobile this fall, check out latitudeoutdoors.com to see these 2 saddles and a bunch of other mobile hunting gear. We've enjoyed them a lot, and I think you're going to enjoy them too.
All right, guys, we got another in the field tip for you today. One thing we're doing right now while we're out here scouting is looking at overlooked spots and overlooked by us. One thing we always do while we're in the field is using our tracker on onX Hunt to be able to not only see where we've gone, but where we haven't been, and that's what we're going to go look at. So today, we're actually going to work up into a drainage that we haven't been to before. We've walked all around it, but we haven't been up in it. And again, it's a very important factor of using the tracker so you can see where you have been and where you haven't. A lot of times those places you haven't been is your overlooked spots. So if you want to try onX Hunt, you can download onX Hunt today and use the code SOUTHERN and save 20% on your membership.
So outside of turkey calls and a shotgun itself, my favorite piece of gear I've ever bought when it comes to turkey hunting is a red dot sight. My new favorite is the Vortex Viper enclosed red dot. So most of the time, I'm just using the 3 MOA dot. I like just a clean single dot in my sight picture, nice and open sight picture. But I've already run into some situations this season where I'll actually switch to the reticle that is a 3 MOA dot with a 32 MOA circle around it. And the reason I like that reticle is because it allows me to see my nice little point of aim where I'm going to put that dot on the turkey's wattles, but also that circle is going to show me roughly where my pattern is going to go. And for me, it just makes it a little easier to visualize where my pattern is going through the woods, which helps me determine whether or not there's too much brush in front of me, or whether half my pattern's going to catch something between me and the turkey that I don't want it to hit. So I really like that multi-reticle option, and I think you're going to like it too. So to check it out, along with everything else that Vortex offers, head on over to vortexoptics.com, or you can just hit the link in the description of this show. All right, so if you turkey hunt enough, you're going to have to hunt on a windy day like today. We got out here this morning and didn't think it was going to be windy, but it's super windy. On days like today, I love having a crystal call in my vest. This is the Dixie Hen Crystal from Houndstooth. The reason I like a crystal call in particular is because when it's not windy, I can call really, really soft on this call and it sounds great. But when it's windy like this, I can get really loud, and it does both of those volumes really, really well. It's something I feel like is a little bit unique to a crystal call. I really like it. It does both ends of the spectrum great. You can get this call at houndstoothgamecalls.com. Use the promo code SOUTHERN25 to get a discount. And make sure you use that discount code because it helps out the show and you get a discount. Yeah, in Alabama, there's a couple places. Like one of the biggest things I've learned over the years is there'd be a WMA in Alabama. Like there's one in particular that I used to live close to, and I thought it was the worst place God ever created for deer hunting. Like I thought it was awful. And then a guy ends up shooting a 148-inch buck out there, like legit 148.
And then everybody goes.
That blew my mind. I mean, it was already overcrowded. And then we ended up having him on the show. His name's Jeff Homan.
Who also backtracks
deer. And he's like kind of South Alabama. And actually, some of the stuff that we've walked in Florida so far actually kind of reminds me of that place a little bit. With just the sapling thickets, the pines are kind of similar, and just the density of the cover. And so it's just kind of interesting hearing you talk about this because it just reminds me so much of what he's talking about. Like he's backtracking the deer and he's hunting them in the thickets and everything. And it's just one of the things I think that confused me so bad on that place is everything was kind of thick. So I'm like, well, how do you ever narrow down what the deer prefer? And you kind of touched on it a little bit, but is there any one thing that you look for in a thicket particularly? Like, are you looking for just density of cover? Like, I can't see more than 2 feet in front of my face in it? Or
No,
what?
I'm looking for safety where no human is going to go. That's probably the first thing in my mind. Like if I'm scouting or looking at a new place, it's if I can access it easier, if it's something I can see on a map, I'm basically not even going to look at it.
Okay. So obvious spots on the
Yeah,
map.
I mean,
Just don't even go.
I mean, and sometimes I'm wrong. Like some of the biggest bucks get killed 200 yards behind the check station, but that's just not where I'm going to hunt. But I'm gonna put my time in somewhere where it's not easy to access.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
Do you think, especially when it comes to hunting public land, and especially down here in Florida, there still is the mantra? There you go. Listen, Andrew's a college-educated host on the podcast.
The only one in the room, huh?
Yeah. So, but do you think that there's still an aspect of you can still outwork somebody when it comes to public land and getting away from people, or do you think those days are still past?
No, absolutely. That's why I don't hunt management areas where you can take an e-bike, because I'm not afraid to walk. 10 miles ain't nothing to me. Yeah, if it's got a lot of roads and easy and old logging trails or fire lane, or just where somebody can jump on an e-bike and take off, I don't even look at it. Not that there's not big bucks there, but it's, I want to get it. My main goal is to get away from people.
And also, I'm sure there's other ways to outwork people, not only walking distance, but walking across or through stuff that people aren't going to want to deal with.
Yeah, crawl through it.
Do you have any good stories about crossing maybe some water or anything like that, close calls or anything?
I wouldn't say close calls. I had a few years ago, I'd went in a place, and it was the first time I'd hunted this management area back in the 90s, and I hadn't been in it since we had OnX and all that stuff. So I didn't have any, I'm just going off memory. Walking in, and I knew there was a pretty bad stretch, and I was going about 6 miles, and which was not very intelligent because I was going in for an evening hunt, so I was gonna be walking back out in the dark, and I hadn't done it. So I was tracking myself in, but for some reason I turned my tracker off for like a half a mile stretch, and it was the worst half a mile. Like you literally funneled down and were stepping from root to base of a tree, going across this, nasty stuff. And coming back out, I realized I didn't have my tracker going when I crossed it, and it was, by the time I got all the way back up there, it was probably 10 o'clock at night. I fought it for I'd fall, go this deep, getting all my stuff wet, pulling on trees, pull myself back up out of it, catch my breath, and try it again. And after about 10, 15 times, I finally got it just right and made it through it. But that was terrible.
Oh, my
So
God.
you say that, and we've got alligators in Alabama, we get snakes in Alabama, but I think Florida is on a different level.
yeah.
That's the
About
first
to say.
thing on my mind.
Alligators are everywhere.
I was about to say,
Alligator.
you got to have like a good reptile story of some kind, like snake, gator, something.
I'm just so used to it, I don't pay much attention, I guess. But I stepped on a good one this year.
Gator?
Not a big one. He's probably 6, 7 foot. I was walking in about 3 o'clock in the morning and came over a tree that had a dry spot. It was, we had them hurricanes, so it was flooded this year. But it was probably a little over knee deep. And I came over a dry spot and stepped off in a little deeper spot and stepped square on his back. About knocked me on my back when he took off.
Oh my gosh, dude. See, Florida people, they're just like, yeah.
Florida man.
Yeah, he's
Definition.
like, not a big one, a 7-footer. I'm like, he's bigger than me. That's pretty big to me. Oh my goodness.
So, but that's why I kind of want to get at talking about outworking somebody and being able to dredge swamps, sloughs, canals, creeks, whatever, in order to get away from somebody. And sometimes maybe it's not always about distance, but sometimes it's just about that half mile of nastiness.
Yeah, there's a lot. I take a lot of new hunters or even hunters that never hunted swamp. I take guys deer hunting, turkey hunting. The biggest thing I see, I don't know if you can see these shoes on the camera, but I hunt out of tennis shoes. So this is the exact. I buy 2 or 3 pairs of these at a time. This is what I hunt out of year round, and the same exact shoe. And guys that show up wearing regular boots or pull-on boots, and you can't walk through that stuff in the boots. It just sucks them off your feet, or you suction down, and then you're fighting for an hour trying to get your boot out of the mud and everything else. So tennis shoes I get around easier, but I practice I mean, I have hours of practicing just walking in mud that if you walked out there, you're going to be sunk up to your waist, and I'm not even to my ankles. I'll run full sprint across the place that is this deep without sinking. So it's just a lot of training to walk in the swamp.
What's the trick to that?
Yeah, please. I need assistance.
I don't know how. I had a guy with me that I lost 27 pounds this deer season, so I do that every year. I had a guy with me the other day, and I was trying to show him, but you're basically not ever putting any weight on your feet, if that makes sense. Your weight is divided between both your feet, and you're pulling one as you're pushing the other, and you're just going.
Call that swamp legs.
Yeah, and they just say I walk on water, but I've spent a lot of years practicing. They call me Peter.
Dang. Yeah, did you lose the faith? You start sinking down, bro.
Yeah, don't slow down.
Dude, that's fantastic.
Also, I've seen. Well, that totally threw off what I was going to ask you about what you were wearing across. I'm thinking you're wearing hip waders or something like that.
These right here.
Do you like I'm just curious because I want to kind of stay on this swamp topic and then kind of transition some, maybe other habitat types that maybe you deal with a little bit and hunt with. Do you like just some real thin pants or something? I mean, I'm just thinking like getting soaking wet.
Yeah, I like them to dry out quick. I mean, most of the time I just buy them off Amazon, but the ripstop kind of water resistant pants, they dry out real quick, and you're not carrying that extra weight when you're soaking wet. I mean, a lot of times I'm going over waist deep, going in or in and out, whatever, or while I'm slip hunting.
Do you hunt like that also when it's cold outside?
Yep.
How's that?
Sometimes I'll take, like if it's where I just got to cross water and then I'm hunting an island or I'm setting up in a saddle, something like that, I'll take a change of clothes with me. Always keep a couple lighters. If I get too cold, I can get dried out.
Oh.
Yeah, I'll strip down, dry my clothes, and warm up, because if not, you freeze to death.
Dude.
Yeah, when it's...
Dude, this is a lot more hardcore than I thought this conversation was going to get, man. I'll be honest.
I mean, dude, hunt the swamps, man. I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah,
Dude,
people don't think of Florida as being cold, but when it's down in the high teens or low 20s here, and you go chest deep in water, within an hour, your body's locking up. Like, you got to do something or you're gonna be in bad shape.
Yeah, it's probably a humid cold, too.
Yeah, it's rough.
It's probably brutal.
Yeah, so while we're on I want to kind of keep talking again about swamps. How do you see bucks, other than, you're saying they'll go through like chest deep water, get on a little dry spot to lay up on. How do you see them navigating swamps? Because we've interviewed guys from other parts of the country that hunt different style swamps, whether it's cypress swamps or just more like flooded river bottoms and stuff like that. The swamps that you hunt, how do the bucks navigate it, both like early season but also like maybe rut?
I'm gonna say rut. I mean, it depends on the kind of swamp. We have so different styles of swamp here. We have the open, or not, we call it open. It's not open, but open cypress swamp where it's just cypress trees and cypress knees, and that's about it. Not much to it, and they just go right through that. I don't hunt that a whole lot just because I don't like the open. I'd rather be where it's thicker, and a lot of that swamp will be real thick patches, so it may be like a acre or 2 acres you can't even walk into. I mean, it's just a tangle. You can't crawl it, you can't walk it, you can't do nothing. But there's a patch here, patch there, and the deer just go in between them when they're going from A to B, like you're talking pre-rut or something. They may go for miles. Like a lot of those swamps, it's amazing. I didn't even realize this until I started running cameras. But say I've got a buck up here on camera at 9 p.m. At 9 a.m. I've got him 4 miles away on another camera, and he went straight through that swamp. I don't know exactly how he did it, but they're just going in between them thickets and checking those.
Yeah, that kind of brings me back to one thing you mentioned earlier, by the way, is about determining their loop. And you said you found that buck's loop. I mean, can you explain that just in a nutshell? What you're doing there? Like, how are you figuring out this buck, especially without trail cameras, that this buck is going from here to here to here, and he's making some kind of loop? Like, how do you put that together?
That was I didn't find well, actually, I take that back. I saw him. I think I killed him on Thanksgiving Day, something like that, and I saw him the week before, just on a scouting trip. I just saw him standing in a cypress pond. And so I, got to looking around, found rubs, and I just basically just started walking around. I'm 14 years old on this one. I basically just started walking rubs, and it'd be rub, and basically I did me a loop, and like, I wonder what he's doing here. Well, first day of the hunt, and the rub line, the loop was a tight loop, like probably 150 yards from rub to rub across this loop. So I got in a climber, and right at daylight, he came by on his rub line. The opposite side I was sitting on, he came by on his rub line. 3 days later, I killed him coming right by on the other line, going the other way.
Are rubs one of the main things that you look for down here when it comes to buck sign?
Just to know a big buck's in the area, but not as far as setting up on them. Like, I don't think I've set up on a rub in a long time. I mean, I've set up, then there happened to be a rub there, but not just, well, there's a big rub, I'm going to sit here. These bucks travel too much. Like, if I'm going to hunt a rub, it's going to be in a thicket where there's absolutely no reason there should be a rub there. Like, it's not a rub line. There's nothing wrong with hunting rub lines. You can sit on them day after day after day and kill a big buck. But I'm not a sit on them day after day kind of guy. Like, I want to go kill him now, and I want to go home.
I got you.
Like,
one thing, we've interviewed a couple guys who are from, again, coastal Georgia, coastal Alabama, maybe South Mississippi, anywhere where you're down, like if you're talking about the deep South here, lower coastal plain, sandy soil, stuff like that. And it seems like they focus more on rubs than scrapes. And so I wanted to ask you the same thing. Are scrapes a big part of what you like to do?
Certain scrapes. And when I say certain scrapes, like if I'm hunting, I might hunt over 1 million acres in one single season, or, be on 1 million acres in a single season, and I might have 2 scrapes I'll hunt out of that 1 million acres. So the right scrapes are money, but there's not many.
They're few and far
between, yeah.
What time of the year would you target one of those 2 scrapes?
Almost as soon as the bucks start breaking up, like the first scrape. Well, let me take that, but that's a little confusing. When the bucks start breaking up, most of the time it's the young bucks that make the scrape, right? So that the older buck is going to be by itself somewhere, but in that 2-week period between when the first buck opens the scrape up, and most of the time it's a little spike or something that opens. If you got a camera on it, it'll be a young buck that opens the scrape up. And I'm going back to these same 2 scrapes that I know I'm going to hunt. They're good year after year after year. He'll open that scrape up, and then sometime in that next 9 days to 2 weeks, here comes the big ones. So I'm gonna watch for that scrape to be hit, and then I know like about 9 days to 2 weeks later I need to be there.
So early season, bow hunting them.
And I hunt them, yeah. And I hunt them. I will hunt them late season. There's down here I don't know how it is in Alabama, but our rut is so spread out across the state. So like, say here at the house, they rut January 20th, February 20th, somewhere in there, which is crazy because 10 miles down the road, they're rutting in late September. So it depends on where I'm at. And even in the same management area, a road will divide the rut, or a river will divide the rut. The place I was talking about where I went in deep 6 miles, I've learned that place enough now that there's a good bedding area, a doe bedding area up front, like close to the parking area. And they come in about October 20th. And then there's the next bedding area south, comes in like November 20th. And it does that same thing all the way back to the back. So the last week of the season, I want to be at the 6 mile mark, basically. First week of the season, I want to be up front. And you can follow the bucks. If I put cameras in all of them, it's the same bucks. They just move.
That makes sense. Now, those 2 scrapes that you're talking about, what's the setup there? What makes that scrape so much better than any of those other scrapes? I'm sure you find a lot of scrapes.
Oh, yeah, there's scrapes everywhere. I'm going to say it's an area where the bucks naturally cruise and travel, going from, like I was talked about, doe bedding area to doe bedding area. And then the doe, both the scrapes I hunt, or say both the scrapes I hunted this past season, were right on the edge of where a whole group of does bed every day. So there's constantly bucks coming through there checking them.
I got you. And what do they? Are they just like gigantic scrapes?
Oh yeah. And if I throw a camera up on it, I'll have, it might be 6 or 7 bucks a day, and you put the camera over there on a rub line or something, you're just gonna get that 1 buck every 3 days or something, and it might be 20 yards apart. They're only there for that scrape.
Interesting. Now, also, it sounds like your main focus is really the thickets and the doe bedding. What about food sources? Are you ever trying to locate like a food source that deer are going to be going to?
I would say I pay attention. Or y'all know more than anybody. Deer eat about anything, but when that pressure kicks up, then I want to try to find the food source where there's no pressure, and that may be, I just call it pondweed, but like an algae that grows in these cypress ponds. It's stringy, and the deer just pull it up and eat it. And when I kill one, I always cut him open to see what he was eating. And late season, a lot of times that's what they're doing is all day long they're staying in that cypress pond. Them bellies would be full of nothing but that algae, where they're just eating that algae. So if I find a good patch of that, I always keep it in mind. But it's not like we don't have white oaks here. Acorns really don't mean a whole lot. I mean, early season, you can get some big bucks coming to acorns, but if there's any kind of pressure, they're not coming out there.
Yeah. Like when we started this show way back, like 8 years ago or whatever it was, 8.5 years ago, part of the reason we started it is because a lot of the information out there was for Midwest guys. And in the Southeast, they're talking about a bed-to-food pattern in Michigan or Iowa or somewhere like that, where they're talking about maybe a woodlot with some oaks in it or an ag field or a big food plot or something like that. And in the Deep South, I was always like, there's nothing like that down here. Like, it's hard to isolate the food source. So, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but basically what I'm hearing you say is there's food everywhere. They can kind of eat anything. So then you can't really narrow it down based on the food source per se, but then your limiting factor is the pressure.
Yeah, safe.
And you just find the food source that's the safest.
The safest, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Safety's like my top priority, period. So if I'm looking for food, that's safety. If I'm looking for bedding, that's safety. The only time it's rare to catch a big buck down here being dumb, really, even rut. I mean, you will, but I really don't rut hunt. I'm still going to where he's going to feel safe.
Bucks or does. Mm-hmm. Like, find where the does are safe too.
Yeah, I mean, the does will use a whole lot less safe area than a mature buck will. But yeah, I mean, pressure will kick any deer out. Somebody's walking through there all the time; they ain't gonna lay there.
Mm-hmm. What are common traits you've seen with a lot of the mature bucks you've killed in the past? Especially again, we're talking public land here. What common traits do you see of like what they have to have in order to survive down here with as much hunting pressure as y'all have, especially on some of these places that have a lot of dog pressure?
What they have to survive?
As in, like, from a security standpoint, can they survive in a very small area, or do they have to have a larger landscape of security cover and quality food source that's, again, hard to get to?
I would say their area gets smaller each day of season almost. Like, especially once gun season kicks off, I've seen some of them literally locked down to a half-acre island. And I'll have a cell camera on it, and that's where they are every day, all day long. They don't leave it in the daylight. Other than 3 days for a rut or something, that's it.
Mm-hmm. Now,
go back to the food source real quick, because one just came to my mind. I talked about the buck I killed when they burned the blocks. That's something I'll pay attention to. If they burn an area, that's got a lot of the thickets, or I know there's a buck that likes to bed here, or bucks like to bed here in the past, and they burn it, then I'll go in there and check and see if they're browsing, especially like the new gallberry shoots and tie-dye shoots and stuff like that. Then I can key on that early season. I'll key in on that because he's going to do the same thing every day. He's going to bed here, he's going to walk out here, he's going to eat, and he's going to go back to bed. And he'll do it every day.
Right.
And if it's a place where they feel safe, especially early season, he's getting out there an hour, 2 hours before dark.
Could you walk us through like your scouting protocol? As in, what do you do in order, like, whether you're trying to find new bucks, you're looking at new areas, how do you go about scouting? I know I'm sure it changes based off habitat, but typically, how are you approaching it, and when are you doing it? Is it a lot in season, or is it before season?
I scout like I already know where I'm going to hunt next year based on last year. Like I scout during season for the following year, and turkey season I'm obviously scouting, but I don't really do any scouting during the current year I'm hunting. I mean, I'll locate some. If I locate a buck, then yeah, I'm gonna go hunt him. But I'm really hunting off last year or the year before last or whatever, historical.
So those annual patterns are huge
Yeah.
for you, and you see it staying pretty consistent. Have you ever had situations where hunting pressure, for whatever reason, changed it?
Oh yeah, yeah,
Okay.
for sure. Yeah, I'll completely write places off. Yeah. And it doesn't take much. You know, a lot of guys, and I see people mess it up on private all the time. You know, they'll get a lease and they go out there and hunt it every single day, or walk here, walk there, look around, and the next thing, man, we can't find a deer in the daylight. Like, well, no kidding, you are the pressure. You know, so I got to be careful being the pressure. But all it takes a lot of times is one or two guys just to come in there and set up, and those deer are done. Like, there's no sense in hunting because they're not going to be out there in the daylight, period.
So one thing I really want to get into, because you alluded to this earlier and you talked about very early on in this interview, is you like to stalk hunt. Can you explain, like, what do you describe as stalk hunting or slip hunting? And you said you do it both with archery and rifle. So, like, walk us through, like, first off, what is it to you? Like, what do you classify as stalk hunting or slip hunting? And then how did you get into that?
I guess I got into it because I always loved it, but just basically never sitting down. You know, I'm going in light. Sometimes I'll take a saddle, or I may slip hunt with a lock on or a saddle, but so I can set up if I need to. But most of the time, I'll pick a day either after a rain, where everything's not crunchy, or I like slipping in the wind. If the wind's too high, the deer are locked down, laid down. They're not moving. You know, they might stand up and browse and lay back down, but they're really easy to slip up on. And if you know where they're laying, you can slip up on beds. But as far as just slipping, trying to spot one, maybe slipping around doe bedding areas and things like that, rut, or just hearing them is a big thing. You know, especially hearing them splash in water, just hearing crashing in thick bushes. Everything around there is thick. But I'll slip. You know, I may take 10 steps, and if you've spent any time in the swamp, every few steps you take, you get a different crack, So I got my binoculars, and I'll take a few steps and get a different crack and look, or I may not use binocular, I may just stand there, but I like, a lot of people say slip into the wind. I like to slip crosswind if I can. We got a lot of swirling wind here, so a lot of times that don't work, but if I can slip cross, I will, because that means the deer are either most of the time going wind to back or wind to nose, so I have more visual. But I may take 2 or 3 steps and stand there for 10 minutes. I may stand there an hour. I may walk 100 yards without stopping. It just depends on the terrain. If I avoid openings, I stay in the shade. If there's a little bit of water, I'm gonna walk in the water. If there's a creek, it may be waist deep or something, but nothing but my head up. Just over the bank, and I'm slipping. I love it.
So what is your approach, or how's it different from rifle hunting, slip hunting, versus archery equipment?
Rifle's a whole lot easier. The bad thing about archery, like if I wanted to actually be serious archery hunting, not that I'm not serious, but if I wanted to trophy hunt during archery season here, I would almost have to do it during gun season because our wind is so bad. Like here, we don't get won't get a cool front till a lot of times December or January. So we don't get any kind of steady north wind or anything till after Christmas a lot of times. So during archery season, the wind's just doing this. It makes it, that's the hardest thing. Probably the hardest thing about hunting Florida is the wind. We just don't get a consistent wind.
But again, you had success doing so.
Oh yeah.
Do you target the same kind of areas?
I've only shot a few out of a tree stand. I slip. Or either I'm sitting down on the ground by a tree, but very few out of a stand.
Is there a reason why?
I like to move. I mean, it's just the saddle. Setting up on the saddle and stuff's not bad because you can take it down and move 100 yards if you need to, but that's my thing. I want to be able to move. Like, something's going on over there. I need to be over there, and I'm gone. Like, I just now I want to be able to move. Make sense?
Yeah, oh no, it does. And is that something that you kind of learn on your own, or is that something that it kind of came later on in life just by being too stationary and it not working for you?
No, I always like to move, and it works. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
I'm curious about slipping up on the beds specifically. Like, that's really interesting. Do you ever go find a bed in the woods where you're like, oh, this looks like it's being used, and go back to that bed?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mark every one I see. And you can tell a buck from a doe 90% of the time around here, especially if you're in like cypress pond type terrain, because the does will wade out there and lay on the little, we call them tussocks, but the little dry spots at bases of trees. But most of the time they're laying up on the hill somewhere in a group. There'll be 2 or 3 of them, and you can see those beds. But if it's just a single bed, and a lot of times he's got a little rub right there somewhere, I got buck beds marked all over on X, but I'll mark them, and then, like, if I'm slip hunting and I'm bed hunting, I'll wait till I got a wind to where I'm basically going through as many beds as I can go through, going the way I need to go.
So you're like planning your route, and you're going to bed 1, bed 2, bed 3.
Yeah, I'll slip up there and look for a long time. I screwed up twice this year. I don't know if y'all saw.
But can you talk about it?
Yeah,
I want you to walk us through a hunt where you've done
I think the first time. Yeah, the first time was a muzzleloader hunt. I think I may be a little confused, but anyway, I went in and I marked the bed last year, 2 years ago, I think. I'd seen the buck laying in his bed, but he wasn't a shooter. I let him go, and that was during general gun season. So this year on the muzzleloader, I had a cell camera out there, and we had the hurricane come through. I was worried about it being underwater because everything was like 4 foot deep, but luckily it wasn't. But my goal was to get out there and get the camera and take it somewhere. But on the way out there, of course, I'm gonna check a couple of beds. So I was slipping through there, and there was like 2 dry spots, probably 3 foot. There's like a 3 foot dry spot here, and then a little dip, and another one, and a log behind it. And when I'd seen him, he'd been laying on the one, which was a little bit higher. So I eased up there, and I'm this deep in water, so I'm real quiet. Had the wind on it, eased up there looking. Man, he's not there. Took a few more steps, and he jumps up at like 30 yards. He had laid behind the log on the other little dry spot right there. So that I wasn't paying close enough attention, but it happens. And then one of the bigger bucks I hunted twice this year. After the hurricanes, he didn't change his home range. Like, where he stayed was deep, like chest deep. And there would be little shallow places he would navigate coming in and out. But I was running, I think I had 3 cell cameras out there, but I was getting him about a mile from where I knew he was laying. Like, during the daylight, I was getting him every single day out there in that deep water. But a lot of times, right at daylight or a little after daylight, I was getting him about a mile away. So I was being lazy, and so I'll just go in there right at daylight. I'll beat him in there. But I got in there, and I took my saddle and planned on climbing a tree to get out of the water. But when I got in there was a blowed down tree from the hurricane, had a big old root ball. So I'll just climb up there and sit down. I ain't even got to climb a tree. I got up there, got comfortable, had on my junk out, camera stuck in the ground. I've used a monopod. I had it stuck in the ground, everything ready. Phone vibrated. It's about 30 minutes after daylight now. Look at my phone. I heard boosh right behind me. I turned around. He's coming off the hill. He'd been laying in his bed the whole time, and it was a mound probably about that high out of the water, and he had laid on the off side of it for me. So I basically came in over here and couldn't see him laying down. When he stood up, there was nothing between us. He was just standing there looking at me playing on my phone. So I couldn't swing cameras in time to shoot him, but he was a heck of a buck.
Dude, that is wild. That is crazy that you're able to slip up on their beds like that. So you're slipping through, throwing the binos up, and trying to pick out like a piece of an antler or just
that's most of the time. That's what you see is an ear flicker and antler.
Can you walk us through a successful hunt of a buck that you've killed like that?
Slipping?
Yeah, or like especially like on a bed.
Probably, trying to think, I hadn't killed any huge bucks doing that. I've killed some nice ones.
Well, even a nice one. Just
Yeah, I've never shot one laying down. I shot one 2 or 3 years ago that was 6 years old. Went in a spot blind, basically. I call it blind. I hadn't been in there in probably 8-10 years, but I kind of knew how they laid, and I had to climb a tree on that one, but just because the vegetation was so tall. So I got in there and climbed the tree, and it had rained. I'm talking about pouring rain all night long, but it was supposed to clear like right at daylight. So I put a rain suit on and everything, walked in there. Took me about 2.5 hours. Got in there and climbed the tree, and as I got up the tree, the rain was stopping and everything, and then, I mean, it wasn't 10 minutes, he stood up. I was like, "Ow, perfect. Now I can go back out of here. 10-minute hunt."
Dude.
That's what I like, though. I just like to move in on them, and I don't like sitting and waiting on them.
One interesting thing about being down here walking around in these swamps is that I can actually really see how you could slip in so close to a bed of deer and them have no idea that you're there. Because you like you said it a little while ago, and I think it really illustrates what these swamps are like, is when you're walking, you're like looking out through that swamp, and you take a step to the right, one step to the right, and you can see like around. You're seeing like through a crack in all the vegetation. And I mean, like the deer I saw when we were walking around earlier, they literally walked through a gap, and all I could see was like the head of the deer came into the gap, and then it was gone. I mean, it was like that small of a gap, and I saw him at like 80 yards.
Yes, there's a lot of times you have to judge quick, like, is that a shooter or not? And filming now, it's a little complicated, a little bit harder, but it's fun.
Dude.
that also, do you see, like, specifically with the stalk hunting, is that something that you do majority of the time always in and around swamps?
Always.
Always. Okay. Pretty much exclusively. And
I mean, that's not because there's not big deer elsewhere. I just enjoy it in the swamp.
yeah. Well, what I was getting at with that is because your woodsmanship skills and understand how to navigate a lot of these swamps, and also understand how the bucks use them and navigate them, it gives you kind of I'm not going to say a leg up on the deer, because of course deer's going to have an advantage living out there all the time, but you have a very good understanding of how they're going to use it, how they're going to bed, how they're going to navigate, and how you can slip in there super quiet, wading through hip deep water or chest deep water in order to get in position.
Yeah, and another thing is, I have no idea why, but like on the same dates, it's the same times. So I know, like, on October 20th, I need to go slip this swamp, and I'm gonna catch them moving at 9:45. Like year after year after year after year.
Why do you think that is?
I have no idea.
Well, and see, but this goes into a conversation we had last year with one of our buddies who's actually our taxidermist, Daniel Williams, episode 584, with annual patterns, and how much that's like how he's hunted the last 25, 30 years is focused on annual patterns. Again, before he was using trail cameras or even had trail cameras at the time, and doing what you're talking about, like learning the dates, the time frame of when people were seeing deer, when people were killing deer, especially when he was hunting hunting clubs, and then going in there in those specific spots the following year and actually killing bucks, doing it like different bucks doing the very similar patterns within the same few days, same time range, all that kind of stuff. And
It's
then
amazing.
And then trail cameras, you can see it super easy if you have the cameras in the right locations.
Another thing is, being a taxidermist, I get to see when the big bucks get killed. When do you think that is?
Late season?
No.
Oh.
Okay, what moon phase?
Oh,
I don't know.
No idea. Take a guess.
new moon.
Huh? New moon?
New moon. Yeah, I'm going to go with new moon.
Full moon every time.
Really? That's the opposite of what I heard as a kid.
In Florida, yeah, it may not be true in other states.
Yeah.
I don't think
But
that's
pretty
true in
much.
Alabama.
Yeah,
At least
pretty
what
much.
I heard. It didn't work for me.
I know the end of the week leading up to full moon, like the 3 days before full moon, and then the 5 days after full moon, I am busy in here because they're rolling in. That's when they get killed.
Okay. And that's also, so Daniel's a taxidermist too. And he talks about that, like the date ranges for certain counties based off like when guys are coming in from certain counties bringing deer in, especially big deer. And that's also what's helped him kind of solidify that pattern is being a taxidermist.
Oh yeah, I get to cheat.
But hey, what
Yes,
county?
sir. I need to go here.
Yeah, what county did you kill that deer in? Was it public or private? Public.
Chasing a doe?
Oh, okay. Good to know. Good to know. Do you also keep tabs, talking about like patterns and stuff? I know we're talking a lot about rut, but I'm just curious here. Do you keep tabs of, again, like you were mentioning earlier, like different doe groups? Like, do you learn your doe groups as well, or are you just solely so focused on mature bucks?
No, doe groups are more important to me. Yeah, I want to know when that doe group's coming in. Like when they're coming in, he's going to be there.
So
I mean, I've got deer. Like really, this year I threw some cameras up strictly for intel, just to basically verify what I already knew, and I had some bucks that were in the 7, 8, 9-year-old range, like done lost their horns, just gnarly, nasty bucks. I knew where they bed use the same bed every single day, and I put a cell camera there, and then I put a cell camera on the closest doe group, and I mean, like clockwork, it's the same date as last year. He left the island, and bam, he's with a doe group, and then move that cell camera, have another one at the next doe group, same date, bam, now he's down there. He just goes from one to the next. If you're gonna kill him, you'd have to kill him on that date because he doesn't leave that island.
Now, going back to you being a taxidermist too, like I'm sure you probably got some regulars who are bringing some deer in every single season. Do they hunt like you?
Yeah, I'm gonna say the ones that the public land guys that bring me big bucks every year, yeah, hunt like me.
Yep.
Yeah, we end up hunting the same. We run into each other. Like that's what I'm talking about. If anywhere I go, I'll run in. It'd be like the same 4 of us or whatever. We got to the point now where we kind of just text each other, "Hey, I'm gonna be here."
What would you say is one of the biggest mistakes that you just see most guys making? You talked a little bit earlier about like guys, they're being the pressure, they're making the pressure that's screwing them up. Is that the biggest mistake that you see, or are there some other ones too?
That's a big one, but I mean, you can do, like I'll do things to, like you have to access, you have to get in and out. So you're gonna leave some scent somewhere. So I'm gonna think, where can I leave that scent to do the least amount of damage? And then I'm gonna pick that, whether I'm picking it out on a map or whether I walked it in turkey season, whatever the case may be, I'm gonna walk that exact step for step the whole way to where I'm going, and I might do that 10 years. And after, like I've got places I'm hunting now that my access trail has been the same for so long, the bucks do not care. I mean, they'll come, I can walk through there and a buck will run by behind me and be all where I just walked because I'm there all the time and it's normal. So I think about 5 years from now. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, that makes perfect sense.
But, I mean, thing, that's where I see guys messing up, is getting out there and just walking around, and that doesn't work.
but you're still seeing that in some areas, bucks are not getting wary of your scent if you're walking the same trails.
Yeah, I mean, because I've been say if I've been hunting a place 10 years, there's not a 10-year-old buck out there. So whatever deer is alive, I've been walking that exact trail his entire life. And it's just another day to him. Yeah, he walked through here.
Okay. Also, another thing I wanted to ask, when it comes to, again, targeting mature bucks, specifically in swamps, deep south, talking Florida here, what is some of the most important things that people need to pay attention to if they're going to try to do this, and whether it's a different part of the state or maybe swamps in like Louisiana or anything like that? What are things that you have to pay attention to if you want to target mature bucks? And again, I would call it really aggressive terrain, even though we use that term specifically for like elevation change, but like stuff that's hard to hunt with water and thick cover. What do you have to say focus on in order to try to become successful hunting that kind of stuff for mature deer?
To start off with, it would be either keep yourself in great physical condition or be prepared. Like I said, I hunt in shoes. If you go out there in boots that are going to get heavy and you're fighting everything to get in there, you're going to get miserable. You're not going to be paying attention. You're going to get depressed, or you're like, I ain't doing this crap no more, whatever. So you got to be prepared, just go in as light as you possibly can, just so it's not as bad on you. And it's tough. be be prepared for the mosquitoes and everything else. Just try to be as comfortable as you can while you're out there, because if not, and you're just miserable, you're not going to have fun, you're not going to do it again, and you're not going to be successful.
Yeah, and that's definitely a big part of it. And like I just see it really one of the biggest challenges being building the confidence to stay positive and stay in it over time. And I mean really there's no way to do that except just having a good attitude and just going out there.
That kind of goes back to where we were joking about picking the management area off the bad reviews on Facebook or something. If those guys would have just stuck to it, the guys that go out and try it once and went 500 yards, oh man, this is terrible, I'm never doing it again. If they would have just went a little bit farther, they would have seen the giant, or maybe killed one and then learned a little bit more and learned more, and the next thing you know, it's easy. Like, I take people now and, I go forever and don't break a sweat, and there's nothing to it, and they're back there, I can't do this anymore. but after a while, you're just used to it.
How does the temperature play a role as well? Because you already mentioned a couple hunts that you've had where it's been really, really hot.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, being in Florida, do the deer, when it's hot as crap outside, do they really care? Because, they live in it.
They don't move any kind of distance. So that, like, if I was going to hunt early archery season and it's 105 degrees, I'm going to try to set up about 50 yards from his bed. Like, 'cause he may not move no more than that till after dark.
Oh.
He's going to be laying somewhere where he can get everything he needs is right there, and he's not moving. The does aren't moving either.
That reminds me of one thing I meant to ask you earlier about the bed. When you're finding those beds that you're going to mark and come back to, when you find that bed, is it just wallowed out? Hair in it, nasty, like smells like a deer?
Yeah.
So that's what you're looking for specific. Because I'm sure you've seen it, especially walking around in maybe some pines or something like that. You'll walk up and there'll be like a little bed right there, or maybe a couple beds. Like it's probably does, but you're looking for something worn out.
Yeah, if it's not worn out, then I pretty much just assume it's a night bed or something that gets used occasionally or something. It's not something I keep track of.
Yeah. And then do you have to find buck sign associated with that bed?
I wouldn't say I have to if it's 100% safe. Like if it has all the features it needs to be safe, then I wouldn't have to. But 99% of the time, there's a rub or something there anyway.
Mm-hmm. And those little high spots out in the swamp that you find them laying on, are you just looking at a map and being like, that looks like a terrible place to go walk, I'm just going to go wade through it?
If I'm looking for beds, yeah. But if I'm looking for beds specifically, get on whatever. And down here, like a cypress tree is gray. When you're looking at it on the map, it's gray, and you can pick out if it's a pine or an oak or something. It's going to be green. A lot of our cypress ponds have pine trees that are this big around out in them, to where back in the early 1900s when they logged, they didn't go out in the pond and cut that cut that pine tree. So it's just a huge tree, and it'll have a dry spot at the base of it. And I'll go all the way out there and look at that one tree, because 9 times out of 10 there's a bed there.
Okay, so that's how you can pick them out, basically. I've seen that on the maps, like looking around down here.
Also, like when we're talking about swamps and stalk hunting and just staying active while hunting instead of like just burying down one spot, I feel like you get a better lay of the land in one day, not only to see a lot, depending on again how fast you walk. But sometimes you said you walk fast, but other times you really take your time working through it. But also seeing how maybe movement shifts a little bit in the swamp versus like just finding sign. I'm going to climb a tree right here because I think it's good, but maybe they're moving 80 yards down, 100 yards down. You don't see them versus working your way all the way through. You have a better chance to potentially see them at that point.
Yeah, I think you definitely see, because one day they're here making sign, the next day they're over here making a little sign, especially like pre-rut. Yeah, I think you bump into them better moving, and then you'll know what they're doing that day, and then I might sit down or. But yeah, I would definitely say I've run into more slipping and learned more. I really, like, in a season, there's not many cases. I don't think I ever hunted the same place twice this past season. Like, I'm one and done.
Okay. Do you run into a lot of other guys that slip hunt down here?
There's quite a few. I wouldn't say a lot.
Okay. So most guys are jacking up a tree and
Yeah, most guys are getting in a tree. You either got, well, I'll take that back. They might classify it as slip hunting, but they're not doing it right. There's a guy, you'll run into 75% of the guys in the tree, and then the other ones are just walking around with a gun. They're not, and they may kill a deer, but it's not going to be over and over and over. They don't have a target in mind and a goal. They're just walking through the woods.
yeah.
But there's some great slip hunters here.
I know we're kind of jumping around a little bit, but I keep remembering things that I meant to ask earlier. With the dog hunting pressure down here, are there certain things that you look for that just will basically keep dogs out of an area that you're trying to key in on, where you're like, I know that if I hunt this, the dogs probably aren't making it to this spot?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Most of that will be there's no vehicle access for guys to get in there and catch their dogs and load them up. So boundary blocks, coming up to a highway, if there's one road to catch your dogs and then there's a highway, most guys don't want to run their dogs out to the highway because they could get on the road and get hit or whatever. So that whole block, it could be a mile, a mile strip or whatever, doesn't really get dogged other than guys accidentally letting dogs get over there, but they're not turning out dogs in there, they're not walking through it. So yeah, that makes a huge difference.
When it comes to hunting down here, I go back to how green and lush a lot of this cover is. Is there ever a point in the fall where just that stuff completely dies out? But and where I'm thinking is more like the palm, like the cabbage palms and just all that kind of stuff. I mean, is that one of those cover types that will stay around for all season?
Yeah, palmettos, cabbage palms, all that, that's green all season. We'll get a good cold front normally after Christmas or January, something that'll kill back all the grass and the green in the vegetation in the swamp. But yeah, it's a very short period.
So y'all are hunting a long season, or you're hunting a long season where everything's green.
Everything's green, yeah.
See, that's another thing when you think about from a lot of the guys when you're talking the Midwest or even parts of, the South, that will have a little bit earlier cold fronts where, we might be hunting until, I don't know, mid-November, late November before we really start seeing a color change. But down here, I mean, like you said, it could be after Christmas before that ever happens. And when does y'all season? I know there's different zones in the state, but like, when do you start hunting typically in the state when you travel?
I normally don't go to Zone A. Zone A is like the Everglades first one to open up. Normally I'm really busy in here, then trying to get the last of the mounts out. So typically I start like the last week of September.
So I mean, three-ish months of greenery before you probably ever have, some of that cover to die back.
Yeah. Kind of going back to food source a little bit. We are jumping around, but it just made me think of it.
Yeah.
Y'all know what cockleburs are?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. That's a huge thing down here, a huge food source in the swamp, because over the summer, them things would grow up everywhere in the swamp if it's dry. Especially on like all the islands would be covered with them, and them deer can just live on that little island and eat nothing. You ought to see, I got pictures where I put a cell camera on a patch of it last year, and in like a 3-week period, it went from just like so thick you couldn't hardly walk through it to nothing but stems in front of the camera. Nothing but a bachelor group of bucks just mowed it down.
Oh, wow.
And they lived right there every day. That was it. Didn't go anywhere, didn't leave the island.
Speaking of cameras, by the way, so you mentioned that a lot of this stuff you learned before you started using cameras, and that you just recently kind of started picking some up and integrating them into what you're doing. How are you using cameras now, and like, have they changed what you do at all?
Last year was the first year I ever used cell cameras. I think they gave me more confidence. Like things I already knew, they verified, and I'm like, I knew I was right. Now I have proof. They help my confidence, but I don't think I've changed how I hunt based off of a camera.
What do you like to put your cameras on?
Coming and going to bed, I like to know. I mean, that's hard to narrow down. I might put it between a doe bedding area and a big nasty pond where I know they like to lay, and I won't catch them every day. But if I'm getting him going in that pond, then I pretty much figure, yeah, he's laid in that pond somewhere every day. I'll put him on the scrapes we talked about, and that's a real good way to know what bucks are, what caliber bucks are in the area, because at some point, basically every buck's going to come to that scrape. I don't know. Sometimes I just put them wherever I feel like it.
Curiosity.
Learn new things. Yeah.
Like some other states in the Southeast, there's parts of public land in Florida that you can run e-bikes on, and that's getting extremely popular. Arkansas is one of those states. I think Mississippi's like that. Georgia's like that. It's still gray / not allowed in Alabama on a lot of stuff. Have you seen that before e-bikes were popular? Did you hunt some of those public pieces that had a lot more, not open roads, but gated roads that you could kind of walk down a whole bunch, but then once e-bikes happened, you kind of had to bounce from those?
More so in turkey season, but yeah. I hunted. It's basically the people are changing how the deer use the property. Like now everybody wants to go deep. That's the thing. Deep. Well, the bucks are 100 yards from the truck, So I might go hunt that area, but I'm not going anywhere. I'm basically gonna go do a blind set close to the parking area or something like that. But I'm not gonna go put a lot of time in those areas and focus on it. I enjoy going remote and just where I don't have to see people.
Why do you like hunting swamps? Like, you have so much wide diversity here to hunt in Florida. Why swamps?
I think it's just in my DNA. I just love it. It's just peaceful. That's it. I mean, there's not big bucks everywhere, but there's potential to be a big buck anywhere. But no, I just love the swamp.
No. Swamps are one of those things. We've talked about this on the podcast in the past with different guests when we've interviewed guys from swamps, because I'm always fascinated to learn, because where we're from, there's not a lot of them. Like, you really got to travel in Alabama, or like when we go to other states, there's a lot more vastness of swamps and like big river bottoms, just that kind of habitat, which is very different habitats, but just when you're dealing with a lot of water. And I've always been fascinated because the guys who grew up hunting that have a lot of confidence hunting it, like you said, I'm not going to say you're isolated, but there's a lot of people that don't like to gravitate towards that, especially if there's a lot of extra legwork trying to get to an area where you're dealing with crossing a lot of water. So you have like part of that wilderness experience where you have a good opportunity to truly be out there by yourself. Some people like that, some people don't. But also, like you said, it has the characteristics from a rugged standpoint to allow bucks to get age on them. And you see that across a lot of states in the Southeast, that if you've got big swamps or big river bottoms that's hard to access, some flooded timber, all that kind of stuff, there seems to be a correlation with that and big deer. And some of it might be nutrition, of course, but also just there's not a lot of people that try to dive in there and hunt it super, super hard to be able to try to kill some of those bucks so they get a ton of age on them.
Yeah, no doubt. I think nutrition and age. The swamp definitely has bigger bucks around here. Or let me take that. It may not have the state record, but it has more 130s. You know what I mean? There's more better caliber bucks in the swamp. But like the hunting public and some of the more popular YouTube shows where they started taking little boats and things like that in, that's got real popular. So I keep that in mind. Like if I'm hunting a management area, it's got a creek or a river on one side and, trails or old roads or something that goes in so much on another side, people can drive e-bikes. You can pretty much just look at a map and say, the deer are going to be here. So that's the only place I look at. There may be 500,000 acre management area and I go look at one place.
Just based on that's where people aren't going.
Right. It's where people are lazy. I mean, the average guy is lazy, so he thinks because he went 6 miles down a river and went up a little creek, he really did something. I mean, I'm not saying that in a bad way, but I mean, that's the thought process. Hey, now I'm deep, I'm going to be in the bucks. But, if everybody's doing it, you ain't done nothing. You might as well just hunt at the truck. It's the same thing, truck, a boat, doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's like the running joke in Alabama for a lot of hunting clubs. Is the biggest buck always gets killed right behind the skinning shed or whatever. It's just because like no one ever thinks about it. Or like another one is like road intersections. Because people, I don't know, it just doesn't occur to people to stop. When there's a fork in the road, they're like, should I go right or should I go left? No one ever like parks right there and goes
Hunts that corner.
Yeah, go and hunts that corner.
Them corners are good.
Yep, yeah. And then, until people start hunting.
Not good anymore, yeah.
Well, it's
Yeah, there's a bunch of that.
well. It talked about like the road intersections. It's also one of those areas you feel kind of dumb if you go in there. If you haven't done it much, you feel dumb because you're smack between two roads. And our buddy Michael Pike, he talked about that in a couple different places that he's hunted, and like just he's like you could see cars go up down the roads and bucks across the road and just like linger right there, or bed right there, or just travel right there and feed. And nobody's stopping. Like, yeah, you're going to see or you're going to hear cars.
I had a video. I've edited it, but I hadn't uploaded it yet. But I shot a buck. It was 2 or 3 years ago, but it was exactly what we're talking about. A four-way intersection. There was a creek that ran there. So, like, you leave the four-way on one of the roads and you immediately go over a bridge. There was a creek right there. So, in between the creek and the road, I'm talking about like a 50-yard stretch of woods. And I kept seeing a track right there. I'm like, I'm going to hunt it. I didn't have a camera or nothing. I didn't know what it was. But anyway, I went there and climbed a tree. And that evening, I'm videoing trucks going by and stopping, people hollering, radio, windows down, everything else. And 30 minutes before dark, here he comes. I mean, in that little bitty strip of woods.
Yeah, and you know, it's kind of funny talking about it because, like, back when I was a kid, that's when at least... Like when I started paying attention, everyone's like, "You got to go deep, you got to go deep, you got to go deep," and then it got to a point, especially since doing the show, where we talked to a lot of people, and it's exactly the opposite of that. And like really, when you get down to it, I think it just boils down to the principle's always the same. Like it's just where they're safest. So on some areas it might be deep, on some areas it might be right by the road. It just depends on what the hunters in that area are doing, right?
Yep. No doubt, that's always first in my mind is their safety. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm looking for.
Also, you just mentioned, filming and everything. What got you into self-filming? I'm curious.
I just wanted to do it for fun. I bought me a couple GoPros and a little digital camera and went to the woods. I mean, people were always telling me, like, I would show buddies pictures and stuff like, man, you ought to film. There ain't 1,000 people alive that's ever seen something like that. So I just started carrying cameras and then loved it. So now I'm always carrying a camera.
Yeah, that's cool. You got a great YouTube channel, and especially after actually coming down here and walking around on some of this public, Florida is cool, man. Yeah. It is awesome.
It's very diverse. Like, I don't have to leave the state to hunt 5 states.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I was mentioning earlier about like why you gravitate towards swamps, because you could hunt 4 or 5 different habitat types and terrain types here in Florida.
An hour drive. Yeah.
Oh yeah, like it's unbelievable. And I told Andrew while we were down here, I'm like, man, this is something that I'm not. I'll be honest. I don't know about coming down deer hunting. I've said that for a while now. Like we've had listeners like, man, you need to come hunt Florida. I'm like, dude,
I'm down to come deer hunt Florida.
What I would like to see is a handful of guys come down here and hunt together and video it and get each guy's thought process. Mm-hmm. That would be cool.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Come on. He wasn't excited about coming down here to turkey hunt. And I talked him into it, and now he's having a great time. So,
yeah, it changed my perspective.
Yeah,
because like I told you last time I was down here, it was terrible. I was in a different part of the state. It was rough, and nothing. What it looked like on the map was complete opposite of what I thought it was going to look like when I got there. Oh man, it messed me up so bad.
Yeah, I mean, it's like with me coming down to a place like this to deer hunt, which I haven't done yet, but I really would like to do it someday. Just because, like, I know I'm not going to come down here and shoot a 150-inch buck. I mean, I might, but probably not. Yeah. Very likely not. But it's something so different, and it's such a unique and cool area. I mean, when I was out in the swamp earlier today, I was sitting there when it was starting to get daylight, and I'm like, I feel like I'm in a rainforest right now.
What I tell guys that want to hunt Florida, even a lot of guys here that live here have never hunted Florida. They all have leases, Alabama, Georgia, wherever. Yeah. They don't hunt here. But I get a lot of people into it, but I tell buddies, shoot your first deer, whatever you want to do, public land deer. But, if you want to have a goal, kill one over 5.5 years old. It doesn't matter if he's a 6-point. He's still going to be just as hard to kill as if it was a 12-point. Just kill one over 5.5 years old, and then you start building that confidence.
I'm going to get Jacob down here on a deer hunt. Mark my words. It might take me a while, but we're doing it. It's happening. I'm putting it out there right now.
Pick some cool weather.
That's what I'm saying. Dude, you couldn't pay me.
It's a special kind of heat.
Yeah, you couldn't.
Yeah, dude, let's come down here late September on a bow hunt and get carried off by mosquitoes.
I'm good. Yeah, I'm good on that. Also, I've got to ask this. We kind of brought this up earlier about reptile stories. Do you have any close encounters with snakes? Walk through all that water like water moccasins?
Moccasins?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, moccasins and rattlesnakes and stuff, it's kind of, treat them kind of like gators everywhere. I got a funny one I wish I had on video. I used to have a clip of it because I took it on my phone, but I was going to a turkey one morning and, obviously not using the light, but it was full moon. It was light enough to see, and I got in the middle of a cypress pond about this deep. It was probably a 50-acre cypress pond, and started seeing, it was starting to get daylight, but I was starting seeing snakes. And as I got to paying attention, I was walking through, there had to have been hundreds of moccasins. And the turkey's right there gobbling his head off. I need to go about another 100 yards, and there's snakes everywhere. I just started flipping them out of my way with a shotgun barrel and kept on going. Got over and killed the turkey. And when I came out, I walked all the way around that pond. There were snakes everywhere in there. But I'll walk up on gator caves a lot of times too. There'll be 5, 6, 7 gators in big gators in one hole.
What is a gator cave?
They dig big holes, especially like when it's cold. They'll have big holes that go underwater and then come up where they're above water underground, and they'll all be in there. You'd be walking along and fall right in one.
Come on, dude, let's hunt Florida.
Dude, you're talking me out. I mean, hundreds of water moccasins in one pond and then gator caves? I'm done, dude.
YouTube that one. The 100 water moccasins in one pond is not something, I don't think I've ever seen it again, but I mean, it was a pile of them. I don't get nervous, and I was like, oh, this is not good. went to flipping them.
Dude, listen. And you said you killed that bird.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man.
Dude.
I'm glad.
Dude, I hate to be a turkey or a deer with you after me. Just like, oh my God. You're like, yeah, I crawled through a gator cave and popped out the other side and killed this. Like, it's crazy.
I told Derrek earlier that I think the only thing I hadn't done yet is kill a turkey hanging upside down. I've done it every other way. I might have to try that in the morning.
Oh, man. Well, Derrek, you mentioned you sell film. Talk about your YouTube channel real quick, because again, I think one of the big reasons why you are highly recommended is when you started putting these videos out. Like over this especially maybe the last year to 6 months, we've had if we've asked about Florida, your name comes up 9 times out of 10. And if people want to watch some of your videos that you've been putting out there, how do they find your channel? And talk to us just about the channel.
The channel I've had up now for like 8, 9 months is just Derrek Norwood Outdoors, and I try to do a video or 2 a week, but that's basically going to be all deer hunting. I try to put as much educational type content in there as I can, along with the entertainment. I just feel like there's a lack of knowledge, lack of woodsmanship skills or whatever, and maybe I can fill that void a little bit, especially when it comes to Florida, because there's not much information out there. That was the idea behind that channel, and I just enjoyed doing it. I started 2020 or 2021, I think, with the Florida Country Outdoors, and that was me and my 2 brothers. It's got dog hunting, it's got a little bit of everything, fishing, whatever. We were doing that one for fun, and I just loved it. So I started the new channel with a little more, I guess, serious thought process of like, I'm actually going to do this. But yeah, I try to put on the content I would watch. It may not always be a kill. It may just be trying to tell you I kill deer, but
you got it on the channel.
It's on there.
Derrek Norwood's Outdoors. Also,
we'll link it in the show notes too, so people can find it.
Yeah, so you check the link down below. One last thing I want to ask you, because you just brought woodsmanship again. There's a surprising amount of newer hunters or new hunters that watch the podcast, also listen, but especially watch. What is something that you would tell them or give them advice on when it comes to a piece of woodsmanship they need to focus on for this coming deer season? As in something they need to build up and to build confidence when it comes to the woodsmanship in the field, to give them more confidence, especially if they haven't really killed many deer.
It's important to learn how to walk quietly in the woods, and I was talking to somebody about this morning, but I can take a guy in the woods and within 30 seconds, I know everything I need to know about that guy just because how he talks. Or, you know, if I'm in the woods, I'm talking quiet, you know, all the time. It doesn't matter if it's May, you know, middle of summer, I'm in the woods and being quiet. You can just hear things. So just learn how to be quiet in the woods, learn how to not be seen by if you're planning on slipping or even coming and going to your tree stand, whatever, you know, stay in the shade, what type of grass or terrain makes noise when you walk through it. Walking in water, you know, practice walking in water, practice walking in mud. Hearing is a huge thing. I think a lot of guys don't, you know, everybody wants to use their eyes. You want to see the deer, you want to see the turkey, whatever, but hearing is so important because you can pay attention. You hear the blue jay, you know, you'll hear a crow, you'll hear something that gives an animal away or kind of tells you what's going on. Just sit in the swamp and learn those sounds. Make sense?
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought walking, too, because, I mean, that's huge. And I don't know, I mean, you do enough, but, like, I always feel like it's one thing, like, scouting, kind of slipping through. It's another thing, like, early season. It's always takes me kind of a re-up, like anything. Controlling yourself and not getting in a rush, especially when you know you are within the buffer or where you need to be set up, you know, a couple hundred yards out or even further if it's loud, to really slow down and pay attention to exactly how you're, you know, stepping and looking with your eyes, but also keep your eyes at the same time.
That's another thing, too, there I probably should have mentioned is sounding like an animal. I mean, a turkey, a deer, especially a turkey, can hear whether we have 2 feet or 4. You know, they're probably, I mean, they have eyesight. Turkeys have eyesight, but their biggest sense is hearing. But a deer is probably the same, you know. Their hearing is incredible. So they can hear you coming. They can hear a twig snap. Don't step on a twig. And if you need to sound, you know, we've all heard armadillos in the woods. They're just, you know, a constant rustle almost. You can kind of shuffle your feet a little bit or do a little turkey scratch, or you can do something just to sound like another animal, not sound like a human. And that's important. I do that a lot.
And also to go deeper on that is the cadence of how you walk. You know, if you want to imitate a turkey's not walking 100 yards at a time and stopping, or 200 yards at a time and stopping. You know, they're going 10 yards, 5-10 yards, and they're stopping for a second, scratch around, and keep moving.
Yeah, if I'm slip hunting and I ever step on a stick, like, and we've all seen it, if we're watching a buck and a squirrel knocks a tree limb out of a tree, he might stand there for 20 minutes, you know. And most time it's not 20, but it could be. So if I step on a stick, I'm going to act like there was a buck that's 50 yards away that heard that, and I'm going to freeze, and I'm going to stand there longer than he's going to stand there, whether there's a deer there or not. And then I'm going to go back to moving.
I love that.
Yeah, that's a good piece of advice right there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Derrek, greatly appreciate you doing the podcast, man. Thank you for letting us come over and do this with you. Again, I'm excited because I want to get some responses from the listeners out there, and I guarantee there'll be something that one of your diehard viewers was like, I can't believe you didn't ask him about this, okay? But this is the first time we've had you on.
I will say this was under protest. I wanted to talk about turkeys.
We're gonna have to do another.
We're gonna have to do another podcast.
I will say this after our experience down here, I definitely want to come back. Okay.
Oh yeah,
but
we're coming back.
But again, I'm very interested. We're gonna talk turkeys. We're gonna do that at some point. Okay. We're gonna do that. But I'm hoping that the listeners, especially the ones that's been requesting you for a while now, because there's been some that's been requesting you for a few years just because they saw you through social media, or maybe it might be some of your customers. I don't know. They never really explained why. But I hope they get a lot of value out of it, but also that even people that aren't in Florida that are watching or listening to this can get a little bit more of your understanding of your woodsmanship skill set, but also how you approach certain situations and how maybe they can look at it through their lens of where they hunt and be like, I can't use everything, but if I change a few things, how can I apply this to where I'm at and have more success? And I think they can do that from this episode.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to say without sounding arrogant, and that's not what I'm going for, but I can... Basically, I'm not saying I haven't been to every state, so I can't say I can do it. But if you can be successful in Florida over and over and over, I can go to any state and be successful, but basically the only thing I'm taking is the pressure, the safety. And you take that to any state and apply it, and it's the same thing You know, a whitetail's a whitetail. They're going to avoid the pressure. They're going to be where it's safe.
Awesome. Well, Derrek, on that note, brother, appreciate you letting us do the podcast with you. Thank you for letting us come down here. Listeners and viewers out there, if you've enjoyed this episode, I want you to share it with a couple friends. Also, leave us a couple comments down below again, especially if you're one of the people that's been requesting Derrek for a while. I want to hear from you because I know there should be a bunch of you guys. But appreciate y'all watching the podcast. Thank y'all for listening, and we'll catch you back here on the next episode of the Southern Outdoorsman podcast. And remember, guys, y'all stay Southern.